The upheaval of the old, corrupt system that the Trump administration has achieved has truly been a sight to behold. Many are approaching this with the perspective of do what needs to be done at all costs, pardon the pun. Whilst the results being achieved are happening at lightning speed and welcomed by virtually everybody, concerns are being raised as to whether the ends justify the means. What is the end, exactly? And are the means in line with current legal frameworks? How do the people objectively look at some of the special interest groups involved with things like Doge and address their concerns accordingly? Catherine raises some strong points around the ways in which the current system is being dismantled and what will likely replace it.
So the first thing they're facing is there was a move by the United States at the end of Soviet Union to become a unipolar empire. And that effort has failed. So we were a unipolar empire for a period of time. And now the U.S., with the loss of the war in the Ukraine and sort of events in the Middle East, is having to pull back and say, okay, we're one of several great powers. So we assert that we're the greatest power, but it's a multipolar world. The second thing that's happened is if you go back, there's a very interesting Australian think tank that tracks the top technologies and who's in the lead on the top technologies globally. And today, the US leads in 7, and China leads in 57, and is rapidly increasing their leadership in the other. And so the new administration is looking at that, particularly AI, of all the technologies. They're most concerned with its artificial intelligence, and they're saying, oh my God, China's replacing us.
Right.
Now, as that happens, and this is not the first administration to face that issue, they are starting to decouple from China. And so we're talking about taking all the trade that has been happening globally and completely reshuffling the economics of that trade. So what it means is things that weren't efficient for me to do locally, now suddenly it's more attractive to do locally because of the tariffs or trade, the transportation expenses. So the fundamental economics of what you do locally and what you do globally is just dramatically changing.
What we saw was a controlled demolition of every single country when it comes to energy, right? Because of climate policies. And so now people's energy bills are through the roof. They're being told in Australia, they're remotely cutting off the power. They've done it again recently.
If you institute the control grid, which is what most of the data centers usually are, you are going to create an energy rapacious waste of resources that will suck up all the energy and more. So it won't go to the people, it will go to the grid that you're using to control the people. And if anything, it runs the risk of sort of, along with the AI, of pushing for depopulation, as we saw during the COVID pandemic. So anyway, but it's important to understand that every country is dealing with embedded inflation, not from the collapse of the dollar, but from the collapse of trade. And part of what you're watching, the new administration, is they're saying, with the new technology, we don't need the old tool. One, we're gonna shift to a multipolar model. That's number one. Number two, we're going to make sure the nationalists are in charge, not the globalists. So it's a different syndicate within the uniparty. You still got the deep state and the uniparty. It's just a different syndicate. Okay, so we're gonna shift to a national model, just like Putin has, and just like Xi Jinping. If you go to the G20 meetings, Xi Jinping and Putin and Modi and the whole bunch committed loyalty to the BIS control model. But they don't want globalists in charge of their country. They want a national layer in charge of their country. So the nationalists are pushing it. And essentially what they're saying is, given new technology, we don't need the old control tools like USAID. We need new control tools. And so what they're doing is they are shifting from the old control tools, and they're building new control tools. And they're getting popular support for doing that by saying, oh, all that old stuff was corrupt. Well, the new stuff is even more corrupt. The greatest corruption in the United States, or at the very heart of the corruption since fiscal 1998, is the U.S. refusing to obey its financial management laws. And it got so bad, Maria, that in the last Trump administration, Trump promulgated a policy called FASB 56, which said, okay, we can keep secret books. And so since the last Trump administration, the books of the United States have been secret. Now, if you look at the pieces I've written, what I'm trying to focus people on is all the things they're putting into place, the nuts and bolts of building the control grid. So if you look at digital technology, we've been building more and more control of the financial system for years. And CBDC and the digital ID is sort of the last piece to be put in place. The most important thing you need is a digital ID.
Right.
That's the next big step. One of the most important pieces after the digital ID you need to build to institute the control grid is you need to put the central bankers in charge of fiscal policy. And what you're watching with Doge is an effort to basically cut Congress out so that ultimately the central bankers can run fiscal policy as well. And what does that mean? It means taxation without representation, and means the people's representatives have no say in how the money, gets allocated or spent. Along with refusal to obey the financial management laws, you're basically destroying the Constitution. And that is the thing we cannot permit. You just cannot permit that to happen. So part of what you're watching is, we have to have radical change. It's not any new coming in administration's fault that we have to have radical change. The question is that change going to be to newer, more centralized control, or is it going to be returning to constitutional government? Everything I see, with rare exception, and there are some exceptions and they're good ones, this team is building the central control grid.